Hello again and welcome back. Today we'll check how the Builder interface works, talk a bit about settings and camera movement. It shouldn't be too long, but it's quite important, so let's be comprehensive. First, we're going to head back on the Tinkercad website. If you don't connect automatically, you can click on Sign In at the top right corner and choose the method you used to create your account to sign back in. Since I used my Google account, I just click Sign In with Google. Once we're back on the dashboard, let's go straight to 3D Design, which is actually the default tab that's open. Alright, let's click on Create a New Design. The software will then load. It might take some time depending on your computer and your internet provider. That's a good time to tell you that if you have a really old computer, you may have some trouble using Tinkercad. But if it's less than, I don't know, let's say 5 years old, you'll be fine. So yeah, here we are, the actual real designer interface. I think I called it Builder Interface, 3D Design Interface. Oh well, you got my point. That's where the magic happens. So, as you can see, the interface is split in 4 parts. Let's go quickly over it, top to bottom. First, you have the very top bar. There, you can go back to your dashboard by clicking on the Tinkercad logo. You can also change the name of your design. Let's actually do that and call this one Camera Movements and Basic Shapes. Just left click on the name and rename your design. Here we go, press enter to actually save. The next 3 buttons here on the right side are actually different way you can visualize your model. Obviously, our design is empty, so it won't be obvious what this does until we've got some shapes in there. But you can still click on it to see what happens. We'll talk more about that in the next video. Let's head back to the normal view. The button with the little plus next to the person outline allows you to invite someone else to your design so they can create something with you using a link that you can generate and then copy and send to another Tinkercad user using, I don't know, an email or maybe the messenger of Facebook. And finally, this last button, well, might seem like it would give you access to your profile, but it actually doesn't do anything. I know, bummer. All right, the second part that I'll go over quickly is the sidebar on the right. Since this video is not about shapes, we won't talk much about it, but let's say that's where you find the library of all the things that you may add to your design and then tweak and modify. You also have 3 buttons here at the top that will give you more options when it comes to placing objects on the design, namely create new work planes. We'll see what a work plane is and what it's for in the next video. Add a ruler on said work plane, or give some hints as to what you've done using notes that you can place anywhere around the workspace. Might be useful if you actually create something with somebody else. The third part of the interface, what I would call the editing bar, is right here at the top. Actually, this bar won't be active either until we've added something to the workspace, a shape, and that we've actually selected that shape. Like I said, that'll be in the next video. I know, I'm sorry, I said that a lot so far, but let's be patient. If you want to get some minor spoiler, you can actually mouse over a button and then you'll see what the button is for. You also see the keyboard shortcut for said button. I promise you, we will use those buttons. The fourth part of the interface is actually what I want to focus on in this second part of the video. It's the actual main show. It's usually called the workspace, and that's where we'll work on camera movement now. I know I've said we would add shape in the next video, but just for the sake of demonstration, let's just add a box on the workspace so that it's actually easier to visualize what we're doing. So in order to put a box on our workspace, all we have to do is left click on the red box on the side here and hold down the left click and drag your mouse over to the work plane. Let's try and put it at the center. It doesn't have to be, right? It's just for demonstration. And like I said, use your mouse. Yes, I did say use your mouse. If you are using the touchpad of your laptop computer, I strongly recommend you get a mouse. It will be much easier to do everything that needs to be done in Tinkercad using a mouse. All right, so now that we've done this, let's actually see what we can do to move around the workspace. Imagine that you have a camera pointing at your workspace from where we stand, okay? And it's making it possible for you to see whatever you want to see, and that camera can be moved to frame what you need and make it easier for you to work on your 3D model. Basically, there are 3 sets of movement: tilting, zooming, and panning. Each movement can be done in different ways, some being relative to what you have selected on the workspace. That's the reason why we had to add the red box. Or you can move around more freely using only your mouse and keyboard to position your camera exactly where you want it to be. Let's first look at what we've got here on the left of the workspace. At the top, there is the view cube. It allows you to position your camera quickly and simply towards a specific point. You have 3 ways of positioning your camera using the cube by a simple click. So the first way is to click on the name of the side you want to see, and then the camera will reposition itself so that it shows you flat the side that you've clicked on. If you don't see any other names, you can actually use the arrows that you can see here on each side. So here I'm looking at the top of my workspace, right? And if I click here, I'm switching to the right. If I click at the bottom, I'll see the bottom. Okay. The second way that you can use the cube and a simple click to reposition your camera is using the edges of the view cube. See, I'm here on between the top and the front. Okay. If I go a bit over there, I'm between the top and the right, even though we can't see it. And if I click here on the edge, okay, so I know I'm positioned well on the view cube because I can see that blue rectangle here. The camera will frame the top and the right side of the shapes that I've added. Okay, and you see I can switch easily from 2 sides to 2 other sides. Finally, the last way to see your design using the cube and clicking on it is by using the corner of the view cube. As you can see, if I move my mouse around the corners, I'll see a little blue square, a blue cube. And when you click on one of those blue cube on the view cube, you'll see 3 sides equally. So if I click here, I can see the top, the back, and the left of the shapes in my workspace. Okay, if I click at the opposite, I'll see the top, the front, and the right. Okay, so those 3 ways are quite useful if you want to rotate your camera around without moving too freely and keeping exactly what you need in the frame. If you want to have a bit more control of what you can see, what you can do is hold down the left click of your mouse on the view cube and simply turn it around. Okay, so hold down the left click and turn around the cube. You can do the exact same thing without using the cube by holding down the right click anywhere in the workspace and then same dragging the mouse around. It's actually a bit more precise because the cube is quite small, whereas the workspace is big, and as you can see it's more fluid. So you can move as much as you want, stopping only when you got what you want in front of you. Now, if you want to zoom, it's pretty straightforward. 2 ways to do it. You can use the scroll of your mouse. Scrolling up will zoom in, scrolling down will zoom out. You can also use the 2 buttons here, zoom in, zoom out, as well as the shortcuts plus and minus. Okay, it's nothing fancy. Finally, if you want to reset the view, simply click on Home View, and it will reset the zoom level and the camera position to what it was when we started tinkering on the design. Now, the button that's actually just below the Home View is the Fit button. And the way this works depends on what you've selected. What we're going to do is add a couple more shapes to our workspace. Let's drag the cylinder here, and let's drag the roof here. What you can see is that when you add something to the workspace, it's automatically selected. Let's deselect this roof by clicking in the empty space around the workspace. And there, it's deselected. Now, if I mouse over the Fit button, it will say Fit All in View. Since nothing is selected, what Tinkercad is going to do is move the camera so that all the shapes visible on the workspace are framed perfectly, or as perfectly as possible, so that they are all visible. Okay, so see, it moved the camera a little bit. If I zoom in, for example, and click again, it will try and bring all the shapes in the middle of the workspace of the camera framing. Now, if I actually only select one of the objects, let's use this cylinder, and I mouse over the button here, it says Fit View to selected shapes. And if I click on it, what's going to happen is zoom in and reframe the workspace so that only the shape that I have selected is visible. Well, it's not really only the shape, it's just that it won't matter where the other shapes are, it will only take the one I've selected into account. And you've seen that it actually doesn't change the camera angle, it doesn't change the way it's actually tilted, it will keep the tilt of your camera, and it will simply zoom in or zoom out depending on what you've selected. If I zoom out and I select the two other shapes, for example, and then I click again on Fit View to selected shapes, it will zoom in and move my camera so that those two shapes are right in the middle. Now, if you're doing this tutorial, watching this video while actually working on your own Tinkercad file, your own Tinkercad interface, I suggest you take a bit of time to, well, move around the camera, okay, move around the workspace, select some shapes, use all the buttons that are available to you so that you can see what they can do, okay. It will take some time if you're not very used to using a mouse, to actually moving in 3D, but don't worry, practice makes perfect, and the more you use it, the easier it's actually going to be. Now there is a last set of movement that we haven't talked about, and it's the panning, for lack of a better word. Basically, it allows you to move around the workspace on an X or Y axis depending on the angle of your camera. This can't be done using the view cube, however. There are two ways of doing this, okay? The first way to do that is with one of your hand, okay, left or right, depending on how you use your keyboard and your mouse, you're gonna press and hold down the Shift key of your keyboard. And with your other hand, you're gonna press and hold down the right click, okay, of your mouse. And then when you move around, as you can see, the camera will move on an X or a Y axis, depending on where you are. If you tilt the camera and you move again, you'll see it will change the way the camera moves. Okay, so that's the panning part. There's another way of doing it. It's if you've got a fairly recent mouse, you can actually hold down the scroll click. Okay, so sometimes, well, most of the times actually, the scroll of your mouse has a click if you press it. So if you press and hold down the scroll click and you move around your workspace, you'll see that it does the exact same thing. So that's the panning part. And that's it for moving the camera around. Now it's all about mastering the art of using those sets of movements so that you can easily see what you need to work on your model. Three things to conclude this video. First, we haven't talked about this button here. It switches your view from perspective view to what's called a flat view. Okay, so let's click on it and see what this does. The flat view makes it so that it doesn't matter how far you are from the camera, okay, the objects are always the same size. It's quite hard to grasp how it works and what it could be used for. It doesn't really feel natural. What it can be used for is, for example, to check if all the objects are aligned, if they are of the same height, for example. Let's see if I click on front. Yeah, you can see that my cylinder and my square are of the same height, but not my roof, so maybe I can, put it a bit taller, and then I can see that, they are actually aligned together. But yeah, it's not very used. Our eyes are not used to seeing without perspective, so, just keep it in your mind. Maybe you'll find a use for it when you create your own models. And if you click back on the button, as you can see, it switches back to perspective view. Let's go back to the home view for now. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you in this final part of the video is this button right here. It will allow you to edit your grid. Wow, thank you, Captain Obvious. The grid is the work plane that is created by default, that you see here in blue behind in the workspace. By default, it's 200 millimeters by 200 millimeters, so 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters. And since we are going to use our models in order to 3D print them, maybe the 3D printer that's available to you can print bigger objects than that, or maybe it's limited to a 15 by 15 build plate. Depending on which one you've got, you can either use the preset grid that are available in Tinkercad. Obviously, some of those 3D printers are quite famous. They're quite expensive, most of them as well. But if you don't find your own, and if you know the size of your build plate, you can also use a custom grid where you will be able to change the width and the length of your grid. You can also change the unit. So for you fellow Americans, you can actually go to inches if you're quite scared of not understanding the metric system. Finally, you may have seen that at no point in this tutorial have we saved our work. That's quite normal. Tinkercad is an online software and saves happen every few seconds automatically, which means that you do not need to save before closing the Tinkercad tab in your browser or before heading back to the dashboard by clicking the Tinkercad logo at the top left corner. Alright, so now that we've got this part covered, let's keep on going. Check the next video to talk about shapes, how to add them, as we've done here, how to move them around or modify them in our workspace. Thanks for watching and see you there.